Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you're joining from, this is Room 592, where we unleash the truth. Welcome once again to yet another interesting discussion with our political scientist, our political mind, a gentleman who has been through the years connecting many more dots than you and I could even perceive sometimes. Mr. Kissoon certainly sees through a lot of the political smoke that is being blown from many sides, and he's able to call it how he sees it. And so tonight we're looking forward to another interesting discussion from and with Mr. Freddie Kissoon. But ladies and gentlemen, let me say a warm welcome to you all once again with the news that Mr. Keith Lowenfield has finally been served with the summons for him to appear in court on criminal charges. As you know, he would have been evading this serving of the summons, so to speak. But however, today that was done. Ladies and gentlemen, in all the news we also know, and this is where we are going to go over to our Freddie Kissoon, our political scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday afternoon, we would have known about and read the alarming statement coming out of APNU AFC that caused today's Kaituur News and Stabrook News and other newspaper to start to give the opinion that it seems like yesterday's statement meant that the Granger dictatorship has become more real and than apparent. It is, ladies and gentlemen, therefore worrying, and we would certainly want to know what Mr. Kissoon thinks about that most recent statement from APNU AFC. And as you know, as we go along tonight's chat, we are going to look at the OAS appearances from Karen Cummings and so forth. But we want to start our discussion tonight by welcoming Mr. Freddie Kissoon. Welcome once again, sir. We do appreciate your company tonight.
Good evening, sir. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Mr. Kissoon. And Mr. Kissoon, we would like to welcome you and ask immediately for your thoughts, sir, as we start with that startling statement from APNU AFC that would have been issued yesterday, sir.
Well, there's nothing new in the evolution of their thoughts. We've reached the stage where they know fully well. I believe there's going to be a unanimous decision in the Court of Appeal next week that higher courts have ruled, and the highest court has ruled. So a lower court, which is the Guyana second tier of appeal, cannot override the highest court. Going back to the CCJ is going to be shameless, but I think they're going to go back there. So when they go back to the CCJ is going to say, you're coming back on a ruling that we have given. So they have reached the cul-de-sac, and now they have made their position conclusive and definitive. They will not accept the recount. So it means they will not accept the court's decision. That is not surprising. That's the apex of the attitudinal structure from day one. They were not going to concede, and the fallback position is to negotiate while the sanctions are going on. My feeling is that the next stage of sanctions will be on, and that is the financial network that Guyana belongs to that are going to be restricted. That statement that they wouldn't accept the recount declaration is one can say it's conclusive, though with human behavior there's always different dimensions and different escape routes, but they're not going to accept the court case.
Right. But sir, if I may ask your thought on this now. So if you would recall the last pathway to CCJ, the APNU AFC even placed a full page ad in a traded ad in newspaper. They were viciously attacking the CCJ. Do you think they would, after losing at the Court of Appeal, which everybody assumes they will, do you think they will be that barefaced to go back to the CCJ, a court that they viciously attacked just a week ago?
I don't think you could put logical interpretation to what has evolved since March the 2nd. The concatenation of contradictions are, are morbid. Every day there is a configuration that contradicts the earlier configuration. So placing a full-page ad and then going a step further with more absurdities should not be put past these people. It's been 4 months, and it's been 4 months of, I don't want to say comical in this context that we speak in, because that may not convey the right meaning. It's tragic, very, very tragic for Guyana and for politics in the third world, but more importantly for the Caribbean, because I think the Caribbean, despite remnants of the persistence of colonial thinking in all governments, even including Forbes Burnham. I mean, we claim that Forbes Burnham was the most radical of the post-colonial Caribbean leaders. In fact, he was far more colonial-minded. No Caribbean leader ever donned a purple outfit with long boots and shaving out cigarette and cassava sticks in monarchical fashion in working-class districts, as what Burnham did in South Georgetown. So the Caribbean has always been a placid sea of democratic values, and what has been happening here the past 4 months, it's tragic, but it's also tragic in another sense. It's tragic in a political sense, but it's also tragic in an anthropological, cultural, and philosophical sense. The PNC, well, forget about the AFC, the PNC is holding on to illegal power in the name of saving African Guyanese. But African Guyanese should be ashamed that this civilization could be reduced to this. To 4 months, African leaders in Guyana, speaking in the name of African Guyanese, could descend to these kinds of levels. There is absolutely no recognition on the part of the PNC and their surrogates that human beings have dignity, and at certain point you protect your dignity. And that is what slave rebellions, some of the most phenomenal slave rebellions, some of which occur in Guyana, were all about. It was about slaves asserting their dignity. That it was not only liberation, it was also about dignity. What has been tragic in Guyana is that the leadership of African Guyanese have thrown out dignity through the window. So you would have the president saying one thing today, another thing tomorrow, change his tune. Then you would have Harmon to the point where they even describe their leader as a dual citizen, and took that statement to the U.S. government, submitted a dossier saying that Granger has committed an illegality by being a foreign citizen and yet being the president of Guyana. So getting back to the full page placement, I think they're going to go to the CCJ. The Court of Appeal may rule on Monday, and they're going to file an appeal to the CCJ on Tuesday. You have to realize, and what onlookers in the world who are looking together have to realize, you're dealing with people who, at a psychological level, cannot and will not make differences in what is logical, semi-logical, what is rational, what is aberrant, or what is anomalous. All those values and perceptions are dead. They are just going to do anything that comes to their mind. So we're going to the CCJ. What is comical is that you're going to the CCJ while in the same breath you're saying that you're not accepting the recount, knowing that you're going to the CCJ and the CCJ will say the recount must be the essential declaration. I've gone back to March, in which I said they will stay in power and hope to get some kind of negotiation going. I think the next stage is financial sanctions. And somewhere along the line, they are going to buckle. I don't think anyone knows at this point in time how you're going to get them out of power. I don't know
Right.
if the sanctions are going to be so crippling, or I don't know if they're going to be certain secret phone calls threatening them and saying, now it's time to go. I really don't know how that is going to play out.
Got you. So, Mr. Kissoon, they are, and you rightly mentioned, they are now looking for negotiations. That was one of the, call it an olive branch for now that they have put forward yesterday. However, sir, I mean, you would have a better grasp for it than both Mr. Gildari and yours truly here. It is the same PNC that years ago had an agreement with the PPP on the use of ID cards that end up taking that elections use of ID card and got an entire election vitiated. It is the same PNC that would have had agreements with the PPP, had the Herdmanston Accord, and then threw it all out. So how forget PPP now, how can this country have any trust or reliance that any agreement coming out of any negotiations will be upheld by these same PNCites that continue to squat in office?
Well, there is an additional factor that is fatalistic, and that additional factor is going to scare everyone from negotiating with them. I believe the PNC miscalculated on the dialectical evolution of African survival in Guyana. Nigel Hughes said it best. I think he was very, very insightful when he said they should not have banked on elections after 2015. They should have reached out to other stakeholders and say, let us rearrange fundamentally the configurations of this society, meaning that they wanted to have a say in terms of their constituencies, meaning that they felt that Africans would always be in a disadvantageous position. But they did not do that. They called an election. And now that the election has turned into a volcanic eruption, it means, therefore, that the lava is going to sweep them out of history. I cannot see in 20, 30, 40 years, no one can predict human behavior, and the next government, which is likely to be the PPP, could fall flat in their face. But I cannot see the PNC as a party, even with any other formation attached to the apron string, whether it's another party called BFC or MFC or what have you. I can't see the PNC winning an election and being in government. So this is crunch time. And whatever negotiation you enter in with them, you have to be afraid that as the power structure is laid out and the guarantees are accepted by all, they are going to make a realpolitik move that would shift the tectonic plates in their favor. I believe they are going to do that. And why they are going to do that is if you come to a power sharing arrangement with them or anything with them, you have to change the constitution so drastically that they do not have any control over the security forces. Once you have a security force with that kind of makeup, any sharing of power with the PNC, you're going to be facing the precipice. And therefore, those kinds of realities are going to deter people from shared governance with them.
Right. So using your term, fatalistic in a way, Freddie, what do you see then as the next step for Guyana? I mean, as I said, PPP, PNC aside, what as Guyanese people we are looking at possibly now? Because if Granger refuses to step down, let us say tomorrow morning, Madam Claudette Singh wakes up and decides to declare these elections, and Granger refuses to step down, sanctions, it means they know what sanctions will come and they just couldn't be bothered.
But that is going to happen. Unfortunately, I said it before in this program.
Mm-hmm.
I am
Yeah.
not here to soothe people or to allay their fears. And I would think you as a media operative, you have an obligation to journalism and to objectivity. I wish I don't have to meet those people tomorrow that are going to look me with, painful eyes. But I have to say it, and I am saying it tonight. I think we're going to pass through some excruciating times with sadness and burning fever, figuratively speaking, in people's mind. I wish that would not happen. But I think you have to use the bow to say example to show we are really dealing with monsters. That may not be a social science term, but I think we should bring it into the social science lexicon when we're dealing with the PNC, the AFC, in this critical juncture in post-independent Guyana. If Bautista could be wanted by one of the top governments in the world, Holland, if he could be convicted in his own country and facing prison, and the man as a president conceded election defeat, and we have people here who are not facing even a modicum of those consequences and are refusing to give up and are behaving in the most bestial, moronic, imbecilic, cruel ways. What do you think is going to happen? There is no psychological and there is no political indication so far from anyone. I'm talking about the apex of the PNC and the AFC.
Right.
I'm talking about the second tier leadership and the third tier. I don't know about the fourth tier. That would be the people, the party cells in the different parts of Guyana. But I'm talking about the apex, which would be Ramjatan, Nagamutu, Granger, Harmon. The second tier, people like James Bond, Sherwood Duncan, and another level. Except Raymond Gaskin, there is no voice, none, that have come out and even said something mollifying in an innocent way or harmless way. Except Gaskin, no one in the AFC, none of these, they are lawyers. There are lawyers in these two parties that do not make a living, from the government, that could say, look, let us concede this thing, and yet tomorrow they will practice law and get their income. Even them, I told Gita Chandan, husband, I guess Gita Chandan is a legal advisor to Joe Harmon and who was a candidate in the 2020 election. I taught her and her husband is an independent lawyer. He never got anything from the government in 2015. I said, say something. There's no one saying anything. When you look at the diaspora support for the PNC with professors, people who teach. I went to the University of Toronto, one of the top universities in the world, and you have a woman like Alisa Trotz, who is a professor there. You have a professor of law in Barbados, Arif Bulkan, who teaches UWI. And those people are refusing to comment on what is one of the most naked, undignified, dangerous, and tragic trajectories in the evolution of the British West Indies. So you could imagine what is happening. One of the most disastrous consequences of this election impasse is the implosion of UC Koyana and his return to Sidney King. That man wrote a letter 3 days ago in the Star book, and shocking is a mild word. when you describe his betrayal of Guyanese history, that man is actually supporting the rigged elections. That was an icon. Go and read his letter. The letter is so full of disgust that it is sickening. In one section, he lashes Ralph Gonzalez. In another section, he said because of the protests in the U.S., the U.S. is trying to divert attention from those protests by interfering in Guyana. And another part of the letter, he said, I cannot make any comments because all the people that are commenting have political positions, either from the PNC or PPP. When a former president of Liberia commented on it, when one of the Caribbean's most respected scholars, Hilary Beckles, the UWI Vice Chancellor, the chairman of reparations for the Caribbean, and Quayana said, I can't comment because I'm only hearing hearsay. You see what tragedy has unfolded in this country? So, where we go from here, no one can predict, but all we have to do is echo what Keith Rowley said. It's not going to end well, and it's heading there.
Freddie, let me ask you an add-on here, albeit a little bit of a childish question, but it's worth getting your thoughts on it. Do you see a time will come, whether you could say it's sooner rather than later or later, when people like Moses Nagamutu and Kemrad Ramjatan and even maybe David Patterson and so forth will probably be expelled from the hardcore that would be building their power base now?
I believe it's over for them. These 4 months have certainly destroyed a lot of people. I don't believe the present generation will have any remembrance, any respect for people like Clive Thomas, Rupert Rupnarine, Moses Nagamutu. Those three are in their middle 70s and are going on. Someone like Kemrad Ramjatan, I believe, will just automatically fade. What are we going to witness here is that there's likely to be an implosion in the PNC and some soul searching. And what may emerge is either some young people coming to the forefront or some young diaspora Guyanese returning home to take charge of the PNC. But as to the older PNC leaders like Granger, as to the APNU people, AFC people like Patterson, Ramjatan, I think they will just naturally fade. And they will fade because, one, they wouldn't have that mental energy to resuscitate themselves. It's been a terrible 4-month period. It's been a terrible tragedy. Secondly, given the young population we have, they will have no respect for them. So they won't be able to tap in to that young generation. I mean, if you look at what's going on, the future is Dr. Asha Kissoon from the New Movement. There's no relation to me. These guys like Josh Kanai and Timothy Jonas, those are the people I believe that going to emerge outside of the PPP and give hope to the young people. I also do believe that there may be forces within the PPP that may effect a transformation, and and the PPP been through a very bad period with Jack Dio, and I don't want to dismiss anybody's capacity to change. The human being is infinitely capable of transforming, and he himself may look back at his 15 years and say, I brought some of this on to Guyana, and he may very well go a different route. I do believe, from my experience since the past 4 months being part of Kaiju Radio, I have seen some very forceful, radical young people in the PPP who have no knowledge of the 60s, the 70s, and of Janet and Jenny Jagan, and they may very well be able to carve out new horizons and new niches.
Right. Freddie, let's go back to one of the line of thoughts you expressed earlier. Now, on the presumption that the PNC wants to stay in power regardless of what any court decides, so even if Claudia Singh comes out and declares their finale the winner. So, Freddie, here is where I want your thoughts. Let us assume first week in August, Madam Chairman of the GCOM says, okay, she's declaring, and Chancellor decides to swear in Air Finale, because as long as she declared, and I see the Chancellor not getting herself involved in the Court of Appeal matters, which means she probably is keeping herself out from anything there. Now, the moment Air Finale swears in, he becomes the head of the armed forces as well, right? How does that, and where do you factor that leaves the desire to create this dictatorship going ahead?
Well, you're going to have two kinds of power there. You're going to have practical power versus legitimate power. I've stayed away from using the word constitutional and de jure and de facto. Practical power is going to lie with David Granger. Legitimacy, not legitimate power, because he wouldn't have any power. Legitimacy is going to lie with Irfan Ali. What is going to happen is the state. This is where Marxist analysis comes in, and the nature of the state. The difference with the third world and the industrial developed West is that over a period of hundreds of years, the state machinery have so evolved that what it evolved into is an institution of its own that has independence of the government. A very good example of that is the United States of America. Anyone who says Trump is dominating the state and dominating the state sector in the United States, that is not true. I think they even within his own government, there are people that are refusing to do things. Now, the difference with the third world is that our state in the third world never have those centuries of existence. So it hasn't evolved into an independent force, independent of the government. So the state is not relatively autonomous. The state is still a stooge of the hegemonic government. And I think they are going to use that kind of subordinate mentality of the security forces to stay in power.
One would recall when Teddy Jagan would have first come into power after 1992. I think within a year or 2 years of him, within a year, I think he said we have won the elections, but we are not in power.
But it's those were statements that were conveniently used to get some kind of political understanding from the state and the public institutions. But since Jagan came into power, the PPP came into power, what you had was a hit-and-run exercise. The state never overthrew the PPP. The state never confronted the PPP. What they did was episodic sabotage, and that led to the PPP forming some kind of countermeasures, like they had the senior civil servants had a special grouping, a kind of semi-trade union thing, to act as a buffer against the Ghana Public Service Union. But the state sabotaged the PPP, but they never sought to overthrow it. And I think one of the reasons why the state never overthrew the PPP government is they were afraid of the uncertainties. But do not make the PPP the innocent, emasculated government that it was since 1992. I think Jagdeo, given his cunning and given his understanding of politics, was able to confront a recalcitrant state sector and a recalcitrant security forces. But he didn't do it through bitter confrontation. He did it with a mixture of confrontation and inducement. So he was able to cajole with favors. And I don't want to go beyond that. I hope your readers and viewers know what I mean by favors. He was able to get a crucial section of the public service and the security forces to stabilize themselves. That is why when he jumped 4 senior army officers and put Admiral Gary Best, the 4 officers just quietly demitted military service. So I think Jagan was sending out a warning to the public service and the security forces that we're in power and you guys don't like us. And maybe it worked. Maybe it worked because they never overthrew the PPP.
Right. So just last thing on that same line then, Freddie. Let us just follow the same theory that, okay, APNU decides they're going to stay, they're going to hold on to whatever power they have, although it's illegitimate and illegal. Now, it means that there is potentially, at the end of the day, whether it's a year, 2, 5, 6, whatever years, they are looking at some negotiation that will bring an end to this bifurcated country and governance that we're going to have. Because in that stead, GCOM doesn't figure. Elections doesn't matter anymore. Because what PNC has managed to do now is abolish this thing called free and fair elections.
What is going to happen? This is how I see it's going to play out. And of course, this is speculation. I believe the PPP constituencies are going to suffer immensely, like other constituencies, when the sanctions start. You see, sanctions are like car accidents. You don't deliberately pick out who's to get hurt. When a man runs through a red light, he is not deliberately picking on hitting John Jones. Sanctions are going to hurt everyone. It's going to hurt the PPP constituencies. The PPP constituencies are small, middle-sized, and huge businesses. PPP constituencies have some very super rich people. Then also they have the agricultural producers. The labyrinthine connections between the Caribbean economies and the Western economies are in fact very intricate. So when those economic sanctions start, it's going to affect even Guyana's relation, not so much with the banking system in the West, but with the system in CARICOM itself. We may not be able even to export pepper sauce to Trinidad. What I think is going to happen is the PPP constituencies may say to Jagdeo, Nani Nandalal and them, we are suffering terribly. Should you not open up some negotiations? It's going to be difficult to predict what Jagdeo, Nandalal and Afan Ali them are going to do. But we can easily predict what Granger and Harman and Nagamutu them will do. They will say, once the mayhem continues, once the devastation continues, we're in power, so they will have to talk to us. I can't envisage a situation where they are going to demit power. Under one circumstance, I believe, is somebody very, very powerful is going to give them an edict and say, if you don't do it, we are going to remove you. That may scare them. And I think what they will do is say, well, if you're going to come and remove us, then please give us a way out. And they may the West may find that way out for them. Having said all of that, I don't think they're coming out.
But Freddie, to come back to the statement that was issued by Jack Deere today, and you've said that he's not somebody who stands by, or he's very canny in the way that he does things. If Granger and his band of riggers believe that they can continue to hang on to office after the declaration has been made, they're living in a fool's world. Do you believe that the PPP and its upper echelon of the party is standing by and waiting for things to happen? Do you believe that they're not taking actions, maybe working behind the scenes with international and other partners to ensure that what you're talking, that scenario, does not come to pass? That maybe also it could be a testing of the waters by the coalition, that they're saying that they're not going to recognize any declarations from the recount?
Well, Mr. Jagdeo and the PPP leadership cannot remain silent in the post-APNU statement, the post-APNU the statement that they made about not recognizing the recount. They have to give their supporters hope. They have to speak aggressively, etc. But I think the PPP knows very well that the magnitude, the latitude they have of confronting an illegal government after the declaration are circumscribed, because you are playing right into the hands of the APNU, and you're going to keep them in power longer. Look, any confrontation with the illegal Granger government using PPP's constituencies to protest and to demonstrate are going to turn violent and are going to turn ugly, because the APNU are going to make it ugly and violent. That strategically is not in the PPP's interest. What the PPP has to do is to keep the rhetoric going, as they did by saying they're living in a fool's paradise. And indeed, they're living in a fool's paradise. The PPP has to energize their constituencies with optimistic rhetoric, but it has to begin and end there, because strategically they are way, way ahead, advantageously, than a besieged illegal government. When you have that kind of massive, formidable, powerful global support, it makes no sense having the country go through periods of instability. And it would not be in the PPP's advantage to do that. It will be to their disadvantage. Now, you're always likely to get an emotional leader to confront an illegal government, but the circumstances in each country are different. If you have an illegal government in Sweden, if you have an illegal government in Ireland, it's the same people with the same color of eyes, color of hair, same names, same culture, confronting each other. In Guyana, it's different. And so you have to take those permutations into consideration when you're going to confront an illegal government. And what is the lesson that the PPP should learn from such a scenario? It's there in front of them as soon as they enter Freedom House, the portrait of Chedi Jagan. He would not have survived that long, and the PPP would not have survived that long if he had engaged in guerrilla warfare or open confrontation with the monstrosities that Burnham carved out in Guyana. He kept banging and banging, and then when the transition in global politics occurred in the 80s, he triumphed. Now, the global order is so shaped that it favors the PPP. So why after the declaration, why go and confront Granger using some questionable methods? I don't believe the PPP is going to do that because I believe they know that it's a matter of time. I haven't put a time frame on when these people will fall, but it cannot be. It cannot be years. It will not be years. You did say if the PPP are not talking to the international community. What the PPP don't have to talk to the international community. The PPP don't have to engage the international community. The international community is so enraged because the diplomats have had their dignity assaulted by the PNC and the AFC. The PPP don't have to talk to the international community because this crisis has taken on a life of its own and has become a crisis for the international community itself. The international community isn't even bothering with the PPP. The international community is concerned with what they see as a dangerous precedent in the 21st century in the Caribbean. And they are prepared to deal with that independent of whether the PPP begs them, implore them, or what have you. It has reached a point where an obscure poor third world government is literally saying to the international community, go to hell. And the international community has not accepted that, will not accept that, and will bring down the PNC-FC government. How they're going to do that is the topic for discussion tonight. I don't know, but I know it's going to be done.
And why should the people, just 1 minute here, how would you respond to some people who are saying that this statement that was issued by the coalition yesterday is a last-ditch attempt by the coalition, knowing that they're probably going to get a negative ruling from the Court of Appeal, and in any case, they just want to test the waters?
Well, hold on, Freddie, before you answer that. So Leonard, there is a new statement that has come out. And Freddie, I want to share this with you. This statement has been released by Joe Harmon, and the last paragraph reads as follows. He's writing it to Ralph Gonsalves, and he says, so just for once, Mr. Prime Minister, stay out of our business. Let us solve our own problems our way. We gonna figure things out we way. Later, bye. More to come. And it is signed, The Resistance. There, Freddie?
I think we lost him there. We're going to get him back.
Let's get him back. So there is a new statement that would have been released by Mr. Joe Harmon. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if Mr. Kissoon has joined us already. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, Freddie.
Yeah, I got disconnected. Sorry.
Did you pay your phone bill?
I was reading with you. I was reading to you that Joe Harmon released about half an hour ago a statement that is directed to Ralph Gonsalves, and the last paragraph of it is telling Ralph Gonsalves, stay out of our business. Let us solve our problems our way. We gonna figure things out our way. Later, bye. More to come, and it is signed, The Resistance. And Freddie, in that letter, in that release that Mr. Joe Harmon has made, he has the following words. It is an attack on Ralph Gonsalves and CARICOM and ABCE and everybody you could think of. And it says, quote, Mr. Prime Minister, you seem inclined to believe that there is a small majority who wants to keep APNU-AFC in power. You need to reconsider where you got that information from. To the contrary, a vast number of Guyanese now see that CARICOM and the ABCE countries are looking after their own interests and not that of the Guyanese people. You see, Mr. Prime Minister, you mentioned that CARICOM staff are being abused and attacked by the supporters of APNU-AFC coalition. Let me be clear here, without fear or contradiction. It is you and the Honorable Secretary General who abuses the staff. Is it not true that the CARICOM staff you refer to has not received a salary increase in almost a decade? Is it not true that CARICOM cannot pay staff pension? And it goes on and on. Speaking of a no promotion policy, and let us deal with the real issues, attacking Mayor Motley's defiance and questioning that Ralph Gonzalez should say who paid for the recount and whether Ralph Gonzalez designed the CARICOM draft report before it was released and stuff like that. So, Freddie, this, while you are talking about the resistance and their decision to stay in power regardless, here you go, sir. It is signed the resistance.
But there you go. It's just another step in telegraphing their thoughts that we are not coming out. And they are doing this as they've been doing the past 4 months with energy, barefacedness, and awkwardness that alienates the world from them. You read the statement that Harmon has. That has to be the statement of people who have lost their way and are in serious mental jeopardy. You are alienating. The more they write, the more there are two indications. One, that they're digging in, and two, they're lashing out irrationally. But I think the most importantly, that statement, despite its imbecilic and also recidivist nature, it's a big expression that we are going to dig in. We are holding on.
Correct.
And so it ties in with our earlier discussion. The worst is yet to come.
And Freddie, I just wanna hold on to a point of your discussion here, sir. You mentioned your thought, and we have discussed. My question was, what would happen to the Ramjatans and Pattersons and so forth? You said they would pay. Sir, what we are seeing here, this proverbial tilting at windmills. You could just see people like Moses Nagamutu that all their life would have railed against certain things. You could see them railing, chomping at the bit, so to speak, of the imperialist kind of thing of the past. But my specific question to you, Freddie, going back to what we said, if there are two governments now, one holding on to the office and one is the legitimate sworn-in government, where then the police, at the moment Irfan Ali swears in, shouldn't the police be clearing out the public offices for the sworn-in persons to take over? Is it going to create a state of unrest and stuff like that, you think, Freddie?
No, I think the police, the security forces are going to wait instructions from the illegal president. They are going to say that we don't have the installation and ceremonial placement of Mr. Ali as president. There is still a de facto situation on the ground that we will have to abide by. And once the Granger remains in the State House and remains in New Garden Street, and once they proclaim the minister of this will be going to Barbies tomorrow, the minister of public security will be meeting the fire service, the public service and the security forces are going to adhere to that kind of action. And you're going to have you're not going to have a dual government. You're going to have a legitimate president and an illegal president, with one having access to formidable state power, which he will use to preserve his physical government.
Whither then, sir, the judiciary?
Well, the judiciary is not like the police force or the army. The judiciary hear cases and make decisions. So somebody has to take a case to the judiciary to say, we want Mr. Ali to be recognized as the president. I don't see how anybody could take that case to court. Constitutionally, once GCOM declares the results, unless the chancellor refuses to swear in Ali, then you can make a court case there. But once she swears in Ali, the role of judiciary is ended.
Mm-hmm. Well, I meant more the role and the placement and well, the security even of the judiciary under a dictatorship, under a set of persons who refuse to demit office.
I don't think the judiciary is going to damage its credibility by taking directions or acting in concert with the illegal government. I can see the security forces doing that, and there are cultural reasons for that. The judiciary have a different type of existence based on different types of values. Even with Burnham, he wasn't able to manipulate the judiciary and get the judiciary to do what he wants. Remember the famous Timal case in which Burnham lost that in the judiciary right up to the Court of Appeal. Mm-hmm. The judiciary is going to be under severe pressure, but this is a different kind of Guyana and a different kind of century. You have the Caribbean. CARICOM is much more a cemented integration unit. There is the CCJ. There is the Charter of Civil Society. And there is the major players in the life of Guyana the past 100 years, the past 70 years, and since independence. So the judiciary is going to be looking at that. There is another thing I am turning my mind over at, and maybe you too should turn your mind on that. There may be forces in very strategic countries that may very well warn the security forces that they may be in trouble with international law if they continue to abide by illegal instructions from Granger. I think if security forces support an illegal government, or the security forces overthrow a government through a coup or a push, I think they can be charged by other countries using international law. I'm not too sure our security forces would want to do that. The advantageous thing we have going for us in this situation is that 1 out of 1.5%, I don't want to use that word 1.5 because people feel that you had half parliamentarian and half what have you. But 1 out of every 2 persons have their relatives, families, best friends in Canada, United States. And some of these people hold very, very good jobs. I am sure a majority of the senior officers in the police force and the army probably have close relatives abroad. I am not too sure they're going to want to risk all of that for a retiring president and a prime minister who has nowhere to go, etc. So these are early days yet. You have to remember that you're dealing with a recalcitrant group of politicians, a power-drunk group of politicians. But that doesn't mean that symptom has affected the security forces. Politicians are power-drunk people. They have no professionalism. And when powerful politicians in powerful countries speak to them, they can frown on them. I'm not too sure you're going to get that same reaction from the security forces. This is not a time in global politics where you can just overthrow a government and live happily ever after. There are going to be serious international repercussions. So I would say, Leonard and Yog, these are early days yet. For all you know, when the pressure comes down, the security forces may defect to the democratic agenda.
Correct. Indeed, Freddie. Freddie, in terms of the courts now, the reason why I asked for your thoughts on the judiciary, because we mentioned earlier that the APNU AFC would have attacked viciously the CCJ. Now we are seeing that, and I rather believe, Freddie, let me preface my question by saying, I rather believe that the APNU AFC knows they have a case that cannot win, and so they start an attack on the court. So now they have started an attack on the Court of Appeal. Today we have seen APNU AFC apologists share on social media that were it Burnham, one phone call would have ensured the right judges were in place. And I felt that was an immensely poor attack on the judiciary, because if there are people in the judiciary that are taking political sides, they ought not to be judges in the first place. Your comment, sir.
As a mainstream journalist and one who works with a mainstream media house, I don't put much premium on what is written by unknown people or so-called low-life people that belong to different political parties in social media. I don't have a Facebook account. I'm not on social media. I more take my analytical direction when people of power and prestige make these statements on social media. But you always have the semi-literate guy who will say all kinds of nonsense on social media. But nothing would surprise me, given this heightened psychological collapse in the AFC and
But Freddie, stick a pin. Hold on. So the evening of the decision from Madame Roxanne George, Aubrey Norton was on their APNO AFC's live feed, and he said that he believed the court has made a political decision, not a decision based on law. So there has been that kind of talk, Freddie, and thus my
no. Don't go any further.
Yeah.
Don't go any further. Those are political strategies that politicians use to intimidate the judiciary. I remember when our former Attorney General Do Not Sing, when his daughter filed a writ in the UK to get Parliament to have the final say in Brexit, there were politicians that were saying things. And politicians and their surrogates will say things to intimidate commission of inquiries, the judiciary, etc. But I don't think it works. Now, yesterday it may be Norton, today it may be someone else. It will not work because I think those judicial officers see it that way. They're seeing people who they probably have no respect for, trying to intimidate them. And those kinds of cheap stratagems work the opposite way. And I want to believe that when you do those things, you irritate those judges. After all, they're only humans. And it would be best for them to shut them out. But the irrationality has gone so deep that they're gonna continue with that. But the PPP missed out on a piece of announcement which they probably knew, but they felt it was not the right thing to do, and it was the decent thing not to say it. But in fact, one of those judges that ruled on valid votes must count have a closer connection with the cabinet than any other judge. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Right.
Very, very blood connection with a senior cabinet minister.
The
Now,
issue was raised, Freddie. The issue was raised. The
right,
issue,
right. The issue was raised while it was going on, but
Right.
I think they said, look, never mind that blood connection. The guy is a professional, and he will rule professionally. And I think he did, because people are putting all kinds of interpretation on the motives of those two Court of Appeal judges that talk about valid votes. But those same two Court of Appeal judges could have given the APNU AFC a complete victory, and the contours of this struggle for free and fair election would have been more difficult. I think Granger and the entire cabal did not want the recount, and they were hoping and they were certain that Gregory Donbans and Brassington Reynolds would have decided against the recount. That is why they took the recount to court. But that decision by Gregory Donbans and Brassington Reynolds was a positive decision contextually, because it got us to where we are. They ruled that GCOM could continue with the recount, but CARICOM cannot supervise it. And they said the last part to protect their credibility, because as judges, they had to read the protocol or the covenant signed between Jagdeo, Granger, and the Secretary General. There were no wording that could have interpreted to mean that CARICOM will supervise the recount. So what Reynolds and Gregory Donbans simply said is, yes, the recount could go ahead. But do you realize, if that Court of Appeal had said CARICOM cannot order a recount, you know what the PNC would have done? They would have got Carter Singh and Lowenfield there and then to swear in Granger. So that Court of Appeal decision provided enormous latitude for us to continue the struggle for free and fair elections. So I don't agree with some of the criticisms I've heard of those two judges with the word valid votes. Maybe they made a genuine mistake. But if they were predetermined, they could have stopped that recount months ago.
Correct. So, Freddie, to come back to, well, I have another important question for you, sir, totally unrelated to politics in Guyana.
Must be a question on Jadari and his red pants.
You're gone there again. But when you would have talked about that thing, let me just jump in
Hold on. Let me field my question. And this question is for both you and Mr. Gildari, Freddie. Our viewers and listeners are all unanimously demanding that you appear on screen for our next week's discussion with you, Mr. Kissoon. What say you, sir?
Okay, let me answer that. There is a PNC parliamentarian, well, you have to say former parliamentarian. He was the one in the no confidence vote that was hitting Charandas and telling Charandas no. His name is Jermaine Figueroa from Linden.
Yeah.
Mr. Figueroa said that my appearance is a disheveled one. And he, Figueroa, is a very handsome man. He dresses in three-piece suit and he looks like Denzel Washington. Now, that scared me. So I'm going to hide my disheveled self and keep away from public portrayal of myself. How about that for a response?
Well, we will take that response, but we will tell you no. We would still like to see you, sir, and I guarantee you that I'm going to push Leonard to ensure that we can do something to get you on screen.
The last time I came on camera, I had on a flamingo long sleeve pink jersey, and Gildari ridiculed it.
You remember that, Freddie? Yo, you had to see this thing. I don't want to take away from
it's
the
an
seriousness.
ordinary pink
It's
long
not
sleeve
ordinary
shirt.
pink.
I
Imagine
I
Freddie
like the
Kissoon with a
color
long
pink.
hair wearing pink t-shirt, man.
I like the color pink.
But
And
Freddie,
that's all right. That's all right. We just would prefer your body language and your expressions as you talk as well. So let's try to see if we can get that done. I'm going to be the dictator here, and like Mr. Green, and say, let's just do it, Freddie. Let's just do it, Leonard. Let's get it done.
yes, absolutely. Do you believe, Freddie, that the chancellor, that if there's a declaration there, that the chancellor is going to comply and swear in air finale?
I haven't seen anything in our judiciary uh, since the Burnham days. I would think with the beginning of the Hoyt era. I haven't seen any descent into barefaced partisanship and ugly unprofessionalism. I haven't. There may be one and two indiscreet things, and that would have occurred in favor of the Jaggio presidency. I think the Chief Justice, to my mind, was a politicized judge biased in favor of the ruling regime under the Jaggio presidency. And it was very controlled. But no, I haven't seen anything that would make me feel
Right.
that way. And I think those two women, stands out admirably. They are an asset to women, the women gender, and they're an asset to judicial professionalism. I may be wrong, but I haven't seen anything that would lead me to criticize them. When it comes to the Chief Justice, she may very well be heading, because of her glowing professionalism and independence, she may be heading down to the CCJ in years to come. And I, for one, will be glad when she reaches there.
And if I may, as a quick follow-up, although I'm taking a beating for not liking pink, it's a unisex color, I'm being told. I do like pink. I have a couple
They
of pink
got
shirts.
unisex
I,
colors. I know colors are colors. So tell me, what is a sexual color?
I don't know. I'm just reading what is on screen here. We have some lovely people who are watching, who are listening,
Unisex
and but
color.
they
So that's a
said,
you and
yeah,
there,
yeah.
darling.
But hold on.
Oh
I
my!
wasn't
I have to
laughing
write
because
that
you were
in my
wearing pink.
column.
I was laughing.
Unisex color.
I was laughing at the getup that you had. But I do respect
Then,
your color.
Leonard, why are you engaging a discussion on
You don't know
sexism
Freddie.
of
Freddie would call you up during the meeting and I said, could you go for a burger? And then you have to pay for the burger. He's inviting you out for a burger.
let
And then, but
let
that's Freddie. But Freddie doesn't want to come on air. I'm not sure was the reason. But let's get back to it.
Am
Do
I
you
not
believe?
an heir?
No. On video, on
Freddie.
cameras.
I
I'm
have
not sure.
another question for you. Let's go back to the discussion on the politics. Freddie, a government, let us just go with the presumptions we had earlier. Worst case scenario, Granger stays there, Irfan Ali is sworn in, and so you have two governments in Guyana. Now, any government, either side will need money. They'll need money. The shopkeepers, the business people are going to continue to collect VAT at the front. So the only source of revenue for this country, because we cannot export or we are not going to get the monies in coming from exports, will be GRA. So what would be your thoughts about the shape, structure, and loyalties of GRA then? Because if Granger stays there, how then would the finances of this country be managed? Whether, sir, BOG and GRA?
Well, I think you're painting
Yeah.
a portrait of supposed stability. I'm
Mm-hmm.
beginning to think that financial chaos has already stepped in and it's going to be aggravated. These people haven't got money. The state's resources is seriously dwindling. And when the financial sanctions are announced, I think we're going to be in a deeper chasm. It's already happening. You are saying where they're going to collect, how they're going to collect it, who the collector is going to be loyal to. What is there to collect? We are
That's right.
facing serious financial collapse. And I think the Bank of Guyana is sounding a subtle warning about that. Now, it's not only the political crisis that is going to devastate the economy of Guyana. The COVID-19 volcano has already erupted in the financial sector. So
Right.
it's not where you can collect and how you can collect. There's nothing to collect.
Freddie, and tomorrow, today, Kit Lowenfield was served with a summons to attend court tomorrow, private criminal charges. Do you believe that he would turn up there? And I have a follow-up question too.
I think he's going to turn up for reasons that once he doesn't, an arrest warrant is going to be issued to him because she did ask him. But turning up is just going to be a ceremonial thing. Once he turns up, his lawyer is going to ask for a postponement, and his appearance is going to be minutes. On the other hand, he may not turn up, but he will be circumspect and tell the court that he is feeling low. He's in a low mood. After all, his name is Lolo. He's in a low mood, and therefore he cannot come. But that is one of the two scenarios. What's the next question after that?
I want to ask you, Freddie. So let's assume that this weekend on Saturday there's going to be that Court of Appeal case. Let's assume that there's a ruling maybe Monday, Tuesday. Do you believe that the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice Retired Claudette Singh, will use that opportunity to call a meeting, or she's going to wait if there's a possibility for a Caribbean Court of Justice case?
Well, you have to follow her trend, and her trend is quite graphic. Her trend is not subtle. Her trend is not something that you have to read between the lines. She will say, I will wait for the exhaustion of the legal process. Now, she knows that Court of Appeal thing is going to take a couple of days because the Court of Appeal is going to meet right away, because all they have to do is say to the lawyers, this petition that you have in front of me has already been decided on, and they are going to cite the Chief Justice exact words, because she said that too. She said some of the things you have in front of me have been decided on by a higher court. You are wasting the court time, and it should stop. I think those were her words. They are going to say the same thing. But once the Court of Appeal rules, Vincent Alexander is going to say, if a meeting is called, that an appeal will be lodged to the CCJ. It would be improper for us to continue seeing that the apex of the judicial system is yet to meet, and she's going to say, fine. That is how she has been behaving.
And you think that would continue ad nauseum, Freddie?
After the Court of Appeal, they're going to file something. That something that they're going to file is against Claudette Singh and against GCON. That is what they're going to do. They're going to find some superficial, frivolous thing, and they're going to file a court case. You see, the thing about the court is, remember Dickens once said the court is an ass? Once you file something in the court operates in a Pavlovian way, and that is out of tradition. Once you file something in court, it has to take a process. The court isn't going to say, no judge has the authority to say that thing you file is stupidness and not holding a hearing. A judge doesn't have that kind of authority. And I mean, we have a precedent in Guyana and in the world. A man is accused of stealing $25 million from GPL. Interpol warrant has been issued for him. The man cannot be found. He cannot be located. Once he's located, the national police in that particular country that he's discovered in will arrest him and have him go through a trial to face extradition to Guyana. Even though that man is wanted in an international criminal arrest warrant, he sued the Cultural Youth for libel it ended up very comically because the Kaieteur News told the judge, you have to have a judicial hearing. So the writ went through the system and it went in front of a judge. And the Kaieteur News said, well, we're willing to pay, but we would like him to collect it in person. And that was the end of that because he cannot come to Guyana. So any writ you file, no matter how absurd it is, it will go through the file, it will be put on the roster, and a judge will hear it. Now, the judge will listen to it, call both sides, both litigants, and it may finish there and then, or it may finish the next day. But a judge will have to hear the writ that is filed. And they are going to do that. They are going to file something against GCOM, something against Claudette Singh, and they have openly transmitted to the society and to the world that attitude. The people have gone beyond redemption.
Well, Freddie, you're talking through this entire thing as if the PPP is not there. They seem not to be paying attention and not taking actions.
But what action you want the PPP?
No, I'm just asking you. You're talking as if they're sitting there. Would it not be a conclusion that PPP has taken a deliberate decision not to do anything at this point in time, but at this point in time also that the writing is on the wall that they are based on by Jack Deo's statement today that enough is enough?
But hold on, before you go there, let's not get off this Claudette Singh thing. My question to you, Freddie, don't you think there would come a day when Claudette Singh will have to say enough is enough, I have to make a declaration and move on?
That's true.
Well, when that day comes, it has to be a day that suits Claudette Singh's temperament. So far, the indications are once the judicial bells are ringing, Claudette Singh is prepared to listen to the judicial bells. I don't think from day one, I have adumbrated my position inflexibly. She has brought us to this crisis, and I think she is responding to the crisis in the month of June and July because of intense international pressure that has been brought to bear on us, on her. Remember, this country has been saved literally from extinction, democratic demise, and being thrown into the lava because of those international forces. They have saved this country. And she has responded to those impulses, maybe because the pressure was too great, maybe she feels she had enough assault. She has assaulted her own dignity too much, and it's time now to redeem herself. But my contestation is the evolution of Claudette Singh's actions was not within her own volition and from democratic instincts. I think there are too many unsavory dissent by Claudette Singh and unsavory and toleration of unsavory behavior by GCOM Secretariat for me to give her an excellent pass in her performance. I am of the belief that she has changed, like so many others, because what we are facing in Guyana is unprecedented. Never, in very few countries as obscure as Guyana, the Secretary of State of the United States have more than 5 times spoken directly about Guyana. Even when in the 60s you had a Secretary of State. Very few times in a small unknown country like this, the Secretary of State would make reference to a country like this, and 5 times. So I think it's that kind of pressure that has caused what Burnham used to call the attitudinal metamorphosis of Claudette Singh.
Yes, sorry, Leonard.
Yes, back to you, Freddie, with regards to do you believe there's a deliberate strategy by the PPP to hold off to see how far it would go, and that enough is enough at this point in time? And this I am referencing, of course, the statement of by Jack Deere today.
Well, Yog did ask me that question, and we covered that field already. Well, maybe you were having coffee or you were looking at your red pants. Well, let me answer it again. The exact question was asked by Yog, and I did answer it by saying the PPP is in such an advantageous position. They don't and should not rock the boat, and they should just wait for the international configurations to take shape. And I think that is what they're doing. Anil Nandalal and those guys are not that kind of intemperate people. They know the politics, especially Jack Deere. He knows what to do and when to do it. He may not be a Democrat, but he's a competent tactician.
What is the end game here, Freddie? Because if you are you're taking over, and I'm talking from the coalition side, you're not going to get there is going to be a declaration for Irfan Ali sooner or later. What is the intent of the coalition? Because it can't be anything else other than holding on to power for a very short while. Nothing else, with especially with oil and everything here.
You know, one of the faults of humans, and I think it's an intrinsic fault in humans, and it's going to stay with humans forever. And it's a fault that humans are unable to overcome, and all of us embody it. A human cannot put themselves into the mind of another person. They can attempt to, they can try, but all the time they do not succeed in sourcing the identical particles turning over in the person's mind. You, me, and so many of us, hundreds of thousands of people who saw that this election was rigged and saying, what the hell, these people are crazy. They got to come out. They are not thinking that way. They feel that if Guyana goes through a crippling period of instability, if Guyana keeps hemorrhaging profusely, then there could be some hope of them still having a say in a post-election dispensation. Now, you and I cannot see it that way because we are not in the throes of a Shakespearean tragedy. They are. One has to understand that if Irfan Ali is sworn in and the PPP comes into power, someone like Kemach Ramjatan and Moses Nagamutu and David Granger become obscure, ephemeral footnotes in Guyanese history, especially Nagamutu. Nagamutu probably would live a very reclusive life and not come out of his home. So the stakes are enormous. So what they are hoping is that when the hemorrhage and the volcano, when the hemorrhage starts and the volcano erupts, we are going to be part of the arrangement to stop it. And that is what I think they're hoping for. What they are hoping for is some kind of team being put together that will say, look, let's sit down and talk. And they believe once that process begins, they will not lose power and forever. When I mean lose power, they will not be out of the decision machinery in governance. There will still be a role for them. Now, you and I can't get into that psyche of them to see that. But that is how I believe they are thinking, that we got to hold on for the sake of our people. Maybe they feel they owe African Guyanese this. for the sake of our own career and also for the sake of their own liberty. Now, this guy, Peter Wickham, a respected academic, has submitted a thesis that he would like us to reflect on. He wants someone, and that someone has to be the PPP, to say to Guyana, with particular attention being paid to APNU, that if there is a new government, we are giving a guarantee that there will be no prosecution of Mingo and Lowenfield. He is saying that these people need to be given some guarantee. I want to believe that is a little bit ill-timed and ill-shaped. I don't see how, if you guarantee them that there will be no prosecution, that they are going to concede power. No, the temperament, the mindset is far beyond that. It's a question of power, and we're holding on to power.
Thank you, Freddie. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time that we wrap our program for tonight. It's been an interesting discussion once again with Mr. Kissoon, and we certainly look forward for another discussion, sometime soon with Mr. Kissoon. Ladies and gentlemen, while I will ask Mr. Kissoon for his final comments with regards to what we can look forward to the next couple of days, please keep in mind that the various political plays continue to happen, but more so, we are looking now to see what the rest of the world will continue to have to say about these new plays that are coming out of APNU ASC. Freddie, your closing comments. We have just 2 minutes to go,
My comments are two-pronged. One is that I don't think Guyanese should start swimming in their pool of optimism. It's not going to be favorable to the society as the days and weeks. The other prong is that the international society, global society, is going to intervene and stop the disintegration. I believe that will happen. I can't say it will be in a few weeks' time, but I think Guyana will be saved. I think the mood of some of the most powerful countries in the world and some of the most powerful institutions in the world, the mood is not to let this happen to Guyana.
Right. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Mr. Freddie Kissoon, and indeed, we got to stay vigilant and we got to keep our eyes on what is happening here. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, we got to ensure that we keep the peace, keep the discussions going, and ensure also that we are able to ventilate our thoughts, but do it in a way so as not to bring or not to be interpreted to be in any way attacking for anyone or anything, because the way things are going, people's tempers are getting very short, people's nerves are frayed on the edges, and so we want to ensure that we can all stay in control of what we are thinking and saying, especially on social media. And I would want to encourage everyone, please ensure that you can continue to maintain some bit of decorum and good mannerisms on social media. Don't share those messages of hate. Don't tolerate it on your feed. Just block and delete. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you once again in Room 592. As we say bye-bye for now, knowing that we are going to be with Mr. Gildari tomorrow at 1:30, Leonard, for elections.
Yes, we are going to continue an analysis of elections 2020 and, of course, try to get to some of those. So it's COVID-19. The situation is getting deeply worrying.
Thank you. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank Mr. Freddie Kissoon once again. Freddie, thank you, and we certainly hope to be seeing you, and I meant that literally, sir, when you return to Room 592. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been good to have you all here. Do remember to say a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best place in the world. Stay safe. Bye-bye now.